and welcome to another edition of Lab Rats. My name is Andy Walker.
I'm Sean Carruthers.
And today on the show, we're going to be looking at the world of broadband connections, how to shop for one, what should you look at, DSL, beans.
Yeah, a bit of twine between these, perhaps?
Yeah, that's right. Sometimes that technology is actually faster than DSL or God knows cable modems as well in some parts of the world. But actually, instead of looking at that, we're going to look at cable modems or DSL modems. So, but first, of course, before we get into the really exciting world of Biff and Boo, finally they're back.
Yes, two countries heard from that we haven't seen in a while on the show.
Absolutely. And of course, Boo's retired again under the coffee table once again.
Yes.
Anyway, before we get into the exciting world of broadband and how to buy your connection, let's take a look at our sponsor's message. Okay, so Sean, let's take a look at these two technologies. Now, one of the reasons I really wanted to do this was because I'm kind of in transitional mode right now. I have actually DSL and cable internet in my apartment at the same time. So we get to do a kind of a side-by-side comparison of the two technologies. And in fact, what's amazing about this is they're both rated around the same speed from download from the internet down into here. But there's some nuances that you guys should know about, and we'll do speed tests of them both just to prove and to look at the two differences. And also we'll talk about pros and cons, because I know, obviously, that there are some features about this technology that not all everybody knows about.
Yeah, it used to be a bit more clear-cut in the past when they first started penetrating into the marketplace. DSL had one speed, cable modem had another speed, and both had certain sets of characteristics that were just sort of taken for granted, and that's not necessarily the case anymore either.
No, it's not, and in fact I think that the old thinking was cable internet much faster, DSL much slower.
Yeah,
right?
and the old thinking was that DSL is dedicated and cable is shared, and that's not necessarily the case either.
No,
anymore.
that's true. That's very true. So let's talk about. Should we start with DSL, for example?
Sure. Let's start with DSL.
So we're here in Toronto, and so the DSL provider here locally, actually we have two. I think is either TELUS or Bell. So we'll use, but I have Bell in here at the moment.
Yeah, and there's also a number of resellers. They'll take the main service provided by the telephone company, and that's where DSL comes from, is from the telephone company.
Right, come from the telephone company
through your regular telephone line.
Right. Right. Well, there's some specialists, absolutely. And in fact, when I lived in Berkeley, California, for example, I had Earthlink, which of course is a traditional dial-up. ISP is now a broadband provider, and that's provided through a third party and rebranded on top of it. So, but anyway, no matter where you are in the world, chances are your telephone company or somebody affiliated with your telephone company or a traditional telephone company reseller will be selling you DSL, whereas your cable internet, of course, is being provided by the cable television people usually. So it comes through that coaxial cable that used to bring you, and still does bring you, cable television, now brings you broadband. Let's talk a bit about DSL first, because I think that's one of the most confusing things out there, and people don't really know the difference or the pit. And I think there are more pitfalls for DSL than there are for cable internet. You may disagree with me, but let's get into it. We'll see. So DSL, first of all, the acronym is
Digital Subscriber Line.
Right, Digital Subscriber Line. And it comes in two variants. There's something called ADSL, or
Asynchronous Digital Subscriber Line.
And then there is, what's the other one called? I was on the tip of my head. I was going to say XDSL, but it's not the case. One moment, please, while I consult the internet. But anyway, so let's talk about asynchronous DSL while I look up that
All right,
thingy.
so asynchronous DSL asynchronous stands for different speeds, basically. So the initial speed of DSL, I think when it hit the consumer marketplace, was about 1 megabit.
1 megabit, 1.5 megabit. So actually, no, it was 1 megabit to start. I think is what they started broadcasting it at. Yeah, exactly.
And that was the download speed. So you're sitting at home, you're downloading Lab Rats. You can download at fast speeds, but then you take that episode of Lab Rats and you want to send it up to your friend, and it just crawls on the way back up. Because the thinking is that people that are on the internet want to experience content that's out there. They're not content generators.
Right.
So
they're consumers, right? They're basically sucking things down. They tend not to be serving information out to the internet per se. At least they didn't used to be. And so the connection I have here right now is advertised at 4 megabits per second. Now, that's just shy, that's actually exactly half of ADSL1, right? So the chances of Bell being able to ratchet that up is actually, they can actually offer a 5 megabit service too. So I think they'll probably get to 8, and as they can switch over to 12 megabits, and they may already have that technology in place, the speeds will get faster and faster. That'll be true of your local provider, depending on what state of the technology they have in their organization.
Right, and things that can compromise that speed are, first of all, the modem. You need a modem that's capable of receiving at the top speed that your telco is capable of broadcasting at. And second of all, if you're at the extreme range, you may get worse performance. It'll start to degrade a little bit.
But ultimately what it comes down to, if you're living out in the middle of a farmer's field, right, way out in the country, DSL is not going to be for you.
Yeah.
You're going to be way too far from the telephone's point of access. And the signal, which is actually carried on a frequency that is above voice range, I think it's 38 kilohertz up. Anyway, look at Wikipedia, that's where I got my numbers from. So, that is just, that signal is going to degrade over beyond 2 kilometers or 3.5 kilometers or whatever.
Right, and to be fair, the same is true for cable. You don't see many people out in rural environments that have cable either, and that's partly because of the cost of getting that extra data out into those areas where you're serving maybe 1 or 2 people, and every square mile, it's not really worth putting in all of that equipment.
Yeah, no, that makes sense, the infrastructure. Data. And in fact, we'll do another episode at some point in the future on WiMAX, because that's wireless point-to-point fast broadband, which would be another option for people in rural, in third world countries where there's no wired infrastructure, as well as in rural areas and that sort of thing.
That's interesting as well, though, just as a quick aside, because this is not the episode, just the fact that people are thinking that going into the rural environment to get broadband through WiMAX, oddly enough, they're rolling it out in urban centers.
In urban centers, that's very true. That's true, yeah. Right, and that's very true. So it's not just a rural technology, for sure. It'll be competitive with traditional wired technologies. So I did finally find on Wikipedia, and I was right, it's called symmetric DSL. You were right, it's called symmetric DSL. So essentially symmetric DSL means that the connection speed out and in is the same speed.
The same speed.
Very often, though, you won't get that on a consumer service.
Oh, God, no.
Right? Because, I would love to have 4 megabits out. God knows at Labrats we would love to have that. Sean would be zipping files between us.
It'd be like 3 seconds and I'd be out the door.
That's right.
And I'd be done.
I don't know. But so SDSL, or symmetric DSL, would be types of services that are being reserved more for businesses and that sort of thing. So all that for naught. Now, so some of the upsides of DSL being that it's a dedicated line, right? It's just you, the telephone company, and the computer, and you basically get a connection between the two.
Yeah, so it's just like your telephone circuit, essentially, because it is using that same set of wires that's coming into your house. That wire goes from the switching station, comes to you, and then goes back out.
Right.
And then that heads back out again to the telcos. So no one else is using that line except for you.
Right. Now the downside, one of the downsides of DSL, of course, is it's still a dial-up service. Now, not in the traditional way that we think of dialing a telephone line out and making a phone call, but you still have to authenticate with the service using a special dialer. And let me just see if I can pull up my little thing here. See, I have a DSL connection here, and I'm going to double-click on it, and we'll call that up.
Right. When this first started out, you had to download a special dialer. It would come actually on a CD when you got your DSL modem.
Yeah.
And it would include this dialer, the PPPoE dialer.
That's right.
And it would create a special PPPoE stands for point-to-point protocol over Ethernet.
Over Ethernet, yeah.
And that it was a special way that included the data that got it back and forth.
Right.
From the telco.
Now that dialer is built into Windows XP. It will be, of course, built into Vista. PPPoE dialers are also on the Mac platform, I believe, as well. Correct.
Yes.
So, but here's what you need. You need a user ID from your provider and a password, just like I have right here. And of course, what you do is you click on the connect button, and it authenticates, and then will connect you. But if you're not connected that way, then you have no broadband connection, with one exception. That if you introduce a router, a home network router, of course, it will do all that for you and keep you connected all the time. So let's talk a bit about cable internet now. Again, a different technology. So this is essentially, it's almost like Ethernet, high-speed Ethernet into your home, but unfortunately you're not the only customer on that connection, on that Ethernet network.
Definitely not.
So if you have a neighbor upstairs or you have a neighbor down the street or whatever, in your neighborhood, you're all going to be on the same local loop. And that means that you share the bandwidth on the connection. So they may advertise it at 4 megabits per second. However, if the person down the street is downloading,
Hey, what are you doing over here?
see, Sean's going to go and yell and scream at the guy because he's downloading way too many movies that are illegal from the internet, right?
Look,
so that'll slow you right down.
Our bandwidth just disappeared.
That's right, exactly. So that's the problem with the neighbors right now, and that's a traditional problem that is actually not necessarily true anymore. I was reading a little bit about it today, again on Wikipedia, and it's saying that a lot of the new technologies now have basically ensured that you will never actually that your neighbors are never going to overtake the bandwidth and use it to a point where you get a degraded service.
Now they're definitely monitoring it. They're throttling specific users back if they're becoming pains and pests to other people on the loop.
Right, and this kind of gate control, this sort of speed control, if you will, is something that is manifesting itself in different products now. So you will go to your cable company or your DSL company, and they'll give you an option. They'll say, okay, Mr. Walker, would you like a light service, a regular service, an express service, or an ultra service, which ultimately means, actually DSL light is 128 kilobits per second. It's about twice as fast as dial-up, the old dial-up. But it costs nothing. It's like $12 a month or something like that, right? Whereas, the regular service runs about, 1 megabit, something like that, maybe 512K, something along those lines. And then you have your basics, your sort of fast basic service, which is 3 or 4 megabits.
Yeah, I find this whole thing a little bit confusing. I'm not up on all the speeds anymore that these things used to be at, because I know for a while there, the DSL was chugging along at 1.5 megabits, and cable was up to 5.
Yes.
And then the cable guys decided, well, let's just start slowing this down, and DSL said, oh, we can slow it down too. So now there's like all of these different plans from everybody.
So in the end, you have to ask yourself how much broadband connection do you. If you're a LabRats user and you like us and you like other video podcasts, you're going to need a really fast connection. So you might want to actually go to your provider right now and say, hey guys, what's your pricing for the one step up? Because downloading this show, for example, and the other shows that you like on the internet may actually be a better experience. You might get them faster like that. So let's do a speed test before we go, or do we have time for that, do you think?
Sure.
We have time. So I'm going to go to this is dslreports.com/speed tests. We'll put the link in our show notes. And I'm going to use their Speakeasy connection, which is a service out in Seattle, I guess. That's where the server is in Seattle. And we're just going to run a little Java application here called, I think it's called Speed Test. You did download it, have to download it initially. Here we go, it's initializing. And what we're going to do is it'll download a series of files of various sizes, and then it will upload a bunch. So let's just get that started, because it's going to take a little while to do. And we'll talk a bit about that. So this is the DSL connection going right now. And as you can see, it's receiving a 768 kilobit file, and then a 1.5 megabyte, actually kilobyte file, 1.5 megabytes, 2.9 megabytes. And it's going, as you can see, pretty fast. Now this is a 4 megabit per second DSL connection. Well, so here's the results. Now I know for a fact before that I had before we started the show, I got just below 4 megabits per second. Now it's reporting, this is DSL, it's supposed to be all of my bandwidth. It's reporting just under 2 megabits per second, so 1.988.
It's worth mentioning, just as well as a disclaimer, that this test is being run over the internet, so any bandwidth or any congestion in between here and there could be cause of the problem as well.
Well, I'm just for security's sake, because that's a pretty bad rating, and I know it was better before. I'm going to run it one more time to give it a second shot here. But I will note while it's doing this that the upload speed on this was 612 kilobits per second, which is pretty good.
That's not bad.
That's not a bad little
upload.
For DSL. No, and this is one of the things you might want to look at when you're shopping for broadband, is if you're going to be sending files to people, if you're going to be, especially if you run a small business, for example, out of your home, and you're going to be sending pictures, you might be sending movies or uploading to, yousendit.com, those type of files. Look at the upload speed that is offered by the broadband services that you're considering buying, because that will have a factor on the experience that you have when you're trying to upload these files. There we go. We got a better result this time. So we'll give DSL some credit there. We got 3 megabits per second, and again over 600 kilobits per second of upload speed. That's DSL. Now let's let us switch
the hot
over.
swap here.
Yeah, I'm going to get rid of my DSL thingy.
Your connection failed again.
A surprise. And I go cancel that.
There we go.
And that's the beauty of cable internet, is there's no mucking around. For the most part, it works, and it works as soon as you plug it in.
It treats it like a network in a business or
Right.
wherever. You plug it in and there it is.
That's why I'm a big fan. That's one of the big reasons to get cable internet.
I'll tell you something about that I don't like, though.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, so actually let me just push the button here on the speed test, and we will get that going again while you tell us why.
Okay, well, the nice thing about a DSL connection where you have a one-to-one connection, the telco and you, and there's nobody else in between there, is the extent of the people on your loop. There's no bad guys in that loop. So
right. There's no wiener 17-year-old kids that are trying to hack into your...
And it doesn't even have to be a wiener 17-year-old kid nearby. If you're on a cable connection and you have this loop that has 100 people on it, for example, I don't know exactly how many the theoretical limit is, but just even 20 is enough. If you've got someone else on that loop that was stupid enough to click on that link that says, such and such a celebrity nude pics, they open it up, they get infected with a Trojan.
Yeah.
Now they're going to be pinging around that entire local network, which includes you and your computer, looking for all of the Windows vulnerabilities.
Yeah, that's very
and
true.
they can hack in.
Yeah.
When I was setting up my mom's computer, she's on a cable connection out in Alberta, and I reinstalled the operating system from scratch, plugged it into the network, and within 3 seconds she was infected.
With a worm.
3 seconds.
Yeah.
That's all it took, because someone in her neighborhood was infected.
Was infected, yeah. I can totally see that. Now, of course, that brings to mind that, even a DSL connection, while that level of security is there, no matter what, if you have a broadband connection, you need an antivirus program, you need an anti-spyware program, and you need a firewall of some sort. Now, let's have a look at our performance levels here. Now, curiously enough, so this is giving me 3.2 megabits per second on a 4 megabit. So actually a little bit better than the DSL, but
it's startlingly close.
But it's startlingly close. Now, and that sort of mirrors the performance we had slightly earlier, which was DSL was slightly slower, and the cable modem was slightly faster. But as we said, it was prime time. Everybody's finished dinner now, and they're on the internet. So the local area probably, the local traffic in Toronto at dinner time is probably pretty substantial, and so we're getting not the optimal speeds there.
And what's your upload speed like?
The upload speed is slower. It's 373 kilobits per second.
Now, is it slower because of the nature of cable or because of the package that you are on right now?
Well, let's have a look. There's Rogers. I don't think Rogers.com specifies it. Oh yeah, no, it says 384 kilobits per second upload.
Okay, and that's a big change from the past, where it used to be even up.
Yes, it used to be more synchronous, as it were. Right. Whereas I think that the Bell DSL service actually offered. It said it offers something like 720 kilobits per second upload or something like that. So there you go. Bottom line, DSL somewhat secure, a little bit harder to configure. Bad if you're a long way from the access point, and perhaps not always consistently as fast as cable internet. Whereas cable internet, perhaps share it with your neighbors, a little less secure. Super fast though, as a general rule. Easy to implement. You plug it in. It's plug and play technology, and I don't know if there's any other things, I guess.
That's pretty much got
That's pretty much it. So hopefully you learned a couple things today.
Yeah, the number one thing you should probably take away from this, though, is check out the specs. When you're signing up for one, check out what your upload speed is and what your download speed is, and just make sure that they'll meet your needs. If you're doing a lot of trading in both directions, make sure you're a little bit more synchronous or that you have a higher upload speed.
Right.
And if you're going to be downloading a lot of stuff all the time, then definitely make sure that you go for a higher level of service, whether you're using DSL or cable.
Okay, very good, very good. Okay, a final message from our sponsor, and then we'll be right back with final words.
It's Camtasia Studio, the fabulous screencast software from TechSmith. Record what's on your screen, narrate it, and share it online. Create demos, screencasts, training, and more. And rest assured, Camtasia Studio is made by wholesome programmers in Okemos, Michigan, the home of the hardiest geeks around.
Quick to learn, easy to use, it's Camtasia Studio.
Download your free trial and start screencasting today.
Well, I guess that really kind of, would that stress you out? Are you all wound up, or are you just trying to be zen about all this broadband connection? Yeah, baby.
I need a faster connection, I think.
Yeah, I think you do. I think you do. Okay, so a few final thoughts. If you have any ideas for us about future shows, we like to hear it. So again, feedback@labrats.tv. If you want to send me email and tell me that you don't like Sean's hair, Andy@labrats.tv. And
if you want to send me email to tell me you don't like Andy's attitude, Sean@labrats.tv.
That's right. Well, that's it from us, I guess. My name is Andy Walker.
I'm Sean Carruthers.
And that's it for this edition of Labrats. We'll see you next time.
I'll have to find out why they're downloading so much next
That's
time.
right. Hey, buddy!
Are you ready? Try this at home.
Biff, biff.